Greetings viewers and welcome back. In this video I'm going to cover painting the Citadel wood terrain piece that you see before you. This is just the box that it comes in. I actually have two of these, so eventually I'll end up having both of them done the same way. Obviously I need to show you how I'm going to paint one of them. So this is just the box art on the front. You can see the little fantasy characters in there. Brown trees, green leaves. On the back here you can see again the brown trees with the green leaves, and then they just show you some different other options for like the brown leaves in fall, and then no leaves with the snow theme. So I'll be doing something a little bit more along the lines of this minus the snow. Makes it easy, I don't have to use any of the leaves, and it also comes with a couple little different options, as you can see here, for little warning signs and little things to dangle from the trees. But the way that they glue on there, there's not a whole lot for them to hold on to, and I can just see them snapping off really easily, so I'm not even going to bother putting them on. So this is the one that's still in the box. It hasn't been messed with yet. And here I have the little terrain piece as it sits itself. It is just a little really flat piece of plastic here. Same material the models are made out of. Not very big, and it just has 3 trees. Again, I'm not going to be using any of the leaf options. Nothing special or fancy here. It's just going to be the same kind of devastated, burnt up terrain that I've been doing with my other stuff previously. But the thing I want to do before I get started painting is I want these magnetized. I've already done 2 of the trees. I have 1 left. I was just going to show you how I'm getting it done. The reason why I want these trees magnetized is number 1 for storage. So if I pull all these trees off, again, this is just a real little thin piece of plastic. I can even turn this sideways, stick it somewhere, put stuff on top of it, and not have to worry about breaking these trees off. And then again, I can just set these aside wherever I need to keep them out of the way. Also, for during a game, if I need to move some models in here, let's say my Turvagon wants to move in here, the model's way too big to fit between these trees. Obviously, this area here would still count as wood, so if I needed to, I could take this tree out, place him in here. He's still technically in the terrain, and this isn't getting in the way, and I'm not having to worry about breaking it or setting the model on there funky or doing anything weird with it. So that just makes it a little bit easier for me. So again, I've already got 2 of them magnetized. You can see that I have a little screw in the bottom here, and then I just have some of those 1/2-inch disc magnets on the actual terrain piece right there. I was going to put a magnet on the bottom here, but I couldn't find a way to make it spaced enough that it would actually reach this. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gap between the edge here going down into the hole that's in the center of the tree. So basically all I'm going to do to get started is I've got a 1/8 inch drill bit, and all I'm going to do is drill straight into the bottom of the tree here. I'm just going to go straight in. I just need kind of a starter hole for that screw. So I've punched all the way in. I picked a drill bit size that was just slightly smaller than my screw that I'm putting in there, and I made sure that the screw that I'm using has a flat head on it, obviously, so the magnet has more surface area to stick to. If I use a rounded one, it's not going to stick quite as well, and then there's going to be absolutely no point in me magnetizing the trees on there. So all I've got to do is put that in the hole now, and I've got my Phillips screwdriver, and I'm just going to start cranking this thing down into the tree. I mean, I want it to be as straight as possible, but I already know that I'm not going to be able to get it perfect. So I used a Phillips head screwdriver to torque the screw down enough that I leave just enough space for my magnet to fit in there. And then the way I check it to make sure that it's actually level and it's not going to be too wobbly or off is I just take some kind of flat object, and in this case I'm using the pencil, and just run it right on there. And as you can see, it's pretty much even, just flat all the way across. So now I know that I'm in the ballpark there. So now the last step I'm going to do before we have to sit and wait for it to dry is I'm just going to glob a whole bunch of super glue gel all over the bottom of this magnet. Doesn't really matter how much I use because it's just going to squish out anyway, so the more the better. And then I'm just going to turn it over on this circular spot and push it down. Make sure it's nice and tight. And then we just let it sit. And then now once it dries, I'm going to take it and I'm going to spray paint it with the black Krylon primer paint that I use on everything else. Alright, so the trees are all magnetized. The entire setup is painted black, including the trees, and we're ready to move on to the next step. For those of you that may be wondering how effective it is using the metal screws with the magnets and not using 2 magnets, they're only attached on there with the one like I showed you, and if I turn this upside down I can shake it pretty hard. And then when I turn it over, the trees pluck out just fine. So I'm definitely not worried about any issues with the magnets not holding these on there. So like I said, I'm ready to move on to the next step, and there's only a couple more things left to do on this whole thing. Again, like I said, just like all the other pieces of terrain that I painted so far for my little scheme here, it's going to be kind of a burnt up wasteland type terrain, so black is going to be the main color for the ground. But if you look at real closely on here, you've got a bunch of rocks that are protruding out. You've got a bunch of little broken branches. There's a couple little skulls that are kind of scattered and hidden throughout the terrain here. There's also these little rope things on here, like I mentioned previously, that have those little signs that are supposed to hang from them. But if you look at how small those are, it's kind of useless to try and glue that sign on there, because I already know they're going to break off and get lost, and I'm not really going to waste my time and get frustrated over it. But also on the base of the trees here, you can see there's rocks poking out through the tree roots and stuff, and that goes for all three of them, and then again with the ropes that are wrapped around it. So there's only really a few colors that I'm going to end up needing. I'm going to use that same color that I used on the crater for dry brushing, and all I'm going to do is dry brush these trees so that it looks like kind of that ashy, kind of burnt up look. Since again they don't have leaves, they're all kind of scraggly, it'll look a little bit more realistic, like a burnt up tree. And then again applying that to the same limbs and stuff that are on the ground. And I want to do that first because, like I said, I've got these rocks to paint. And in some of these areas, the tree roots are overlapping the rocks. And I know normally I said you want to start with the lowest layer first, but in this case, if I were going to do that, I'd have to paint this whole rock gray, then come back in, and obviously while doing that, try not to paint these branches. Come back in dry brush, which I know is going to make a mess and get all over everything. Then I would have to come back and repaint this rock again, the same exact color, before going ahead and washing it and moving on to the rest of my steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my dry brush out and I'm going to hit up all these branches. Like I said, I know I'm going to slop some on the dirt, I'm going to slop some on the rocks, I'm going to get it all over the place in parts that I don't want it. So I'm going to have to go back and do touch up anyway, but it's going to make less work for myself than having to do this twice. So once I've done that, if there is a little bit of splatter on the rock here, all I have to do is come back and paint gray once and I'm done. Then just maybe do a little bit of touch-up black around it and keep moving. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up to start my dry brushing, and we'll get started. Alright, so we're back and we're ready to start dry brushing. I kind of lied a little bit. The color I'm going to actually use for this is going to be Folk Art. It's Dove Gray 708. I chose to use this instead because it's kind of a lot of surface area to cover, and those Reaper paint bottles are pretty small, and I don't want to waste it all dry brushing since most of it's going to go on the paper towel anyway. So I decided to use this color, and if it turns out that it's a little dark, I may just go back and do some lighter touch-ups with some white, or I can even just add a drop of white to the paint to lighten it a little bit. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started dry brushing, and I'll speed up the video again because if you need to learn how to dry brush, you can watch my dry brushing video. This is just to kind of show you how all my terrain is tying together and going to come out for me. Alright, so as you can see, the tree is dry brushed. This color actually came out really well. I thought it was going to be a little dark, but I guess maybe against the black background it kind of takes that away from it. So it looks like it's a little bit burnt up to me. I think it looks fine. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other two trees the same way, and then I'm just going to go over all the branches on the ground, and then I'll come back to you right before I get to the next step. So it actually didn't take very long to get all that done. And I actually really didn't even make that much of a mess while dry brushing all the logs and stuff that are on the base. You can see there's a couple spots where it went over a little bit, but I just used kind of a light touch when I was putting it on there and didn't really make too much of a mess. So even if I had painted the rocks first, it wouldn't be a big deal, but either way it still has to get painted, so just make less headache for myself. And then again, just so you can see how the trees look on here, they have that burnt ashy look to them. I kind of like the way they came out. So the next step that I'm going to be working on is painting these rocks. So again, the ones that are on the bases of the trees and then the ones that are on this big plastic base for the trees. They're just kind of scattered all over the place, so I'm going to go ahead and start painting those up. And the color that I'm going to use for that is going to be Reaper Weathered Stone. The number is 09087. Let's see if I can get out of the light a little bit. There we go. And then I'm just going to go ahead and get my little fine tip brush and then go around and get all these rocks painted. And hopefully they won't look too bright and shiny, like they're not dirty, so I may have to rough them up a little bit depending on how they come out. So that's going to be the next step I'm going to hop into, and we'll see how they come out. Alright, so since it would take me all day to paint the rocks on this base with a brush this size, pretty much all I'm going to do is I'm going to use that gray color, and I'm just going to kind of edge out all my rocks first, just on the areas where it's butting up against the black, or maybe it's running into some of these little ashy roots, or even on the trees again where they're running into the portions of the tree that I don't want covered in this gray. And I'm just going to kind of edge all those out and leave myself enough space so I can come back with maybe a little bit bigger of a brush and then go ahead and fill in the rest of the rocks, so I can take, you know, again, a bigger brush like that and then actually get the centers where I'm not really concerned about running into anything or having to kind of watch my edges and paint within the lines per se. So let me just go ahead and get started on this, and then I'll speed up the video so you guys can see how it comes out. So as you can see, the rock's finished. It came out a lot lighter than I thought it was. It looks a lot darker in the bottle. Apparently that's not dark enough. So I'm going to probably end up having to put a black wash over this, or I may even just switch colors altogether. I'm probably going to go ahead and switch to this cloudy gray. This is a lot darker. As you can see in comparison, it seems a lot darker on the bottle lid for the weathered stone than this one appears to be, and this is kind of the darker color that I was looking for. Well, let's go ahead and let that dry, and then once I mess with it a little bit, maybe I'll throw some black wash on it just to see if that helps darken it a little bit. If not, I may just switch to this other color, and then I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of this base and then the rocks that are on the trees done. Alright, so all the rocks have been painted. I did go ahead and use the cloudy gray. I just covered up that weathered stone that I had on the one rock. I really didn't like how light it was. This is a little bit more along the lines of the gray I was looking for on these rocks. Now, as you can see by looking at it, if I were to just leave it as is, those rocks look completely out of place with the rest of everything being all black and burnt up and yucky looking. Those rocks are a little bit too clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Badab black wash here, and I'm just going to coat all these rocks with that. I'll probably do a couple on camera, and then again I'll come back and show you what it looks like once I'm done with that. Alright, so the wash is drying now, but as you can see, it's already started to kind of give the rocks that little dingy effect that I was looking for, and for the most part it'll still keep that gray color, so it just kind of dirties them up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the rest of the rocks on this base and then on the trees, and we'll come back and see how it looks. As you can see, the wash is dry and all the rocks have that dingy look again like I was looking for, including the ones that are on the bases of the trees. I think it came out really well, and that's the exact effect I was looking for that I got here. So like I mentioned, there's a couple little skulls that are poking out of the sand here, like those two there, and then there's some more on the other side. I think there's only 3 or 4 in total, so I'm going to go ahead and get those painted next. And the color I'm going to use to do that is the Reaper Polished Bone 09060. And all I'm going to do is just put a little dab of paint on the skulls, and then once it dries I'm going to move on to my 2 coats of wash, how I paint my skulls. And to do that I'm going to use the Griffin Sepia and Devlin Mud and what little left of it that I have before I have to switch to the new color. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done real quick. It's very simple, and the skulls are so small you won't even really be able to see what I'm doing on camera. So when I come back I'll have that done, and then what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and get started on these ropes that are on the trees. So my first coat of wash is drying on the skulls. There's actually 2 over there, and then there's a skull and a little bone over here, and then 2 other skulls on this side. So once that first layer of the Griffin Sepia wash is dry, I'm going to go ahead and put the Devlin Mud over that. But while we're waiting for that to dry, what I'm going to work on next is the ropes that are in this tree. The other 2 trees don't have any, so this is the only one that'll end up getting this treatment. I was trying to find a good color to use for the rope, and the only thing that I could keep coming back to that I kind of like and think might work out is this Reaper Blonde Hair 09257. And it's probably going to be a little bright at first, but if I put a coat of wash or 2 coats on it, it should end up dulling it down to make it look just like I need it to. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is get started throwing that on the tree here, and we'll see how it comes out. So I got the ropes painted on the tree here. I apologize because I thought the camera was on when I first started painting them, and then I realized when I went to turn it off that it wasn't recording, so I didn't catch any of that on there, but it wouldn't really be all that exciting anyway. It's just putting a little bit of paint on the ropes, and you can see what the end product looks like at least. Again, it's a very bright color using that blonde hair paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a Griffin Sepia wash over that, and if it doesn't darken it enough that to a point where I like it, I'll probably throw a mud wash over the top of it just to kind of dull it down a little bit more, because again I don't want it to look like a brand new rope here hanging from the tree that's all burnt up in the little wasteland area. As you can see here, the second coat of my washes have dried on the skulls, so they're looking like my normal skulls that I would put on any of the chaos stuff I had previously. I'll just have to do a little bit of touch up around it because you can see where some of the wash spilled over onto the black, but not a big deal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and throw a coat of Griffin Sepia wash on this rope, and we'll see what it looks like. So as you can see, the Griffin Sepia wash dulled down the rope color just a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough, so I'm going to go ahead and throw on a little bit of the Devlin Mud and see if maybe that'll darken it up to the point where I think it's looks a little bit better on this tree, because again it still looks a little too bright, especially in the environment that I'm going for. So we'll go ahead and throw that on there and see how that turns out. So I put the second coat of wash on the ropes, and it came out looking a little bit better. It's not quite as light as it was before. Also did a little bit of touch up on the black here, just where some of the wash spilled over. I got some gray paint on the bottoms there. All in all, I think it turned out very well, like exactly what I wanted out of it. Hopefully you guys found this video useful and giving you maybe some ideas on how to paint your forest. Maybe not quite in the exact same scheme, but just some ideas on how to paint yours, or if you're not familiar with this product, what it looks like, and perhaps maybe gives you an idea of something you may want to purchase. I appreciate you guys watching the video. If you liked it, please like. You can subscribe. I apologize for the lack of videos lately. I'll do my best to try and create some more for you. If there's anything you guys would like to see, please let me know, and thanks again.